All right, buckle up, because we're diving deep into 100 Years of Solitude. We're talking magic, history, and characters you won't forget.
Yeah, it's a book that really pulls you in. Blends history and fantasy so well, you start to wonder what's even real anymore.
Exactly. We're going to explore that world today, unpack the secrets of the Buendia family, and figure out what makes this book a masterpiece.
And there is a lot to unpack. Believe me, this is more than just a story, it's an experience.
Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning, the founding of Macondo. This is not your typical village, right?
No, not at all. It was founded by Jose Arcadio Buendia. This guy, he was driven by curiosity, wanted to build something totally new, leads his people to this far-off, almost mythical place, totally cut off from everything.
And then, bam,
Yeah.
the insomnia plague hits. People can't remember anything. So Jose Arcadio Buendia, he starts labeling everything. Houses, animals, you name it, just so people remember what things are.
Whoa, can you imagine? Waking up and you don't know what a chair is for. You don't even know your kid's name. That's what the people in Macondo went through. Makes you question, your whole existence.
Yeah, their reality is like constantly changing, makes them doubt everything.
Right. This kind of dreamlike reality, it sets the tone for the whole book. Macondo becomes this, mini world where time and memory are all messed up, blurs the lines between what's real and what's fantasy.
And then you have the gypsies showing up, led by Melquiades. These aren't your typical fortune tellers either. They bring all these crazy inventions, magnets, ice, even a flying carpet.
It's like they're bringing progress and modernity to this place stuck in time, right? But it's not that straightforward. Melquiades especially, he forms this bond with Jose Arcadio Buendia. They're both obsessed with alchemy, with pushing the limits of knowledge.
So is it just about science and exploration then? Or is there something more going on here?
Well, that's what's so cool about this book. It always makes you think on different levels. On the one hand, the gypsies bring new ideas to Macondo, but they also shake things up, add a bit of chaos. And we can't forget those weird parchments that Melquiades leaves behind.
Yeah, those parchments, they're almost like a symbol, aren't they? This thing that connects all the generations of the Buendia family.
Exactly. They're more than just words on a page. They hold the family's secrets, their past, their future, and that's where the whole idea of history repeating itself comes in.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. We have Macondo, this isolated town, suddenly touched by the outside world. And the Buendia family, always shaped by the same events, almost like they're stuck.
You got it. One of the biggest themes is this cyclical nature of time and destiny. It's really clear in how the names repeat in the Buendia family. You have multiple Aurelianos, and each one kind of mirrors the personality and the fate of the one before him. It's like they're doomed to make the same mistakes, destined for solitude and destruction.
So are they really in control of their own lives? Or is everything already decided?
That's the question, isn't it? The book makes you really wrestle with free will versus destiny. Can you escape the past, or are we just puppets?
It's interesting, though, how even with all this talk of fate, the women of the Buendia family, they seem to be the glue that holds everything together.
Absolutely. The women are the strong ones, the anchors in this crazy world. Ursula, the matriarch, she's the perfect example. Lives through almost the entire story, sees everything.
She's got this incredible strength, but also she seems to understand the family's history so deeply. Like, she sees it repeating, but can't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, she knows the cycles, but she still fights them, tries to lead her family to a better future. But even she faces so much tragedy.
And what about the other women? Amaranta, Rebecca, they're dealing with their own kinds of solitude, too.
Like Amaranta, she falls in love with Pietro Crespi, but it's unrequited and it ends in tragedy. She shuts herself away, haunted by her past.
And then there's Rebecca, totally defies expectations and ends up completely ostracized, living in her own little world.
It's like both Amaranta and Rebecca, they embody this theme of solitude, each in their own way. The choices they make, or are forced to make, lead to isolation.
So we're seeing that solitude isn't just about being physically alone. It's deeper, this disconnect. You can be surrounded by family, but still feel completely alone.
You're right, it runs through the whole book. This family, they're always surrounded by chaos, but there's this underlying loneliness that touches every generation.
Like they're all looking for connection, but they keep missing each other?
Yeah, and then we have the banana company coming in.
That feels like the moment the outside world truly slams into Macondo, brings the potential for progress, but also the danger of being destroyed.
It's more than just danger. It changes everything. It's like a tiny version of colonialism. You have this powerful force coming in, making all these promises, but really they're just exploiting everyone.
It reminds me of how Ursula, even though she's so old, she warns everyone about the company. She's seen so much, she recognizes what's happening.
It shows how wise she is, how well she understands history repeating. She senses this progress is just the same old cycle of exploitation.
And she's right, isn't she? The company does bring a boom, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah, a huge cost.
Yeah.
You see this stark difference between the company people living in luxury and the workers getting more and more desperate. It leads to that horrible massacre, a real turning point, and it shows how capitalism can dehumanize people.
The massacre is like this chilling reminder of how violence is always lurking under the surface of so-called progress, a dark echo of the civil wars that keep happening in Macondo.
And it shows solitude in another way, too. After the massacre, Macondo basically gets collective amnesia. It's like the whole town is trying to forget what happened. This silence, this denial becomes another form of isolation.
And then the company just packs up and leaves. Macondo is left in ruins.
It's like a slap in the face. All those promises of progress disappear. The company leaves Macondo broken, physically and emotionally, empty.
So there's this feeling of decline. Even Ursula, the heart of the family, is fading.
Her death is like the end of an era. The link to the first generation is broken, and it feels like the past is weighing heavier on everyone else.
But then Amaranta Ursula arrives. She's full of life, energy, a stubborn kind of hope.
Yeah, it's like a breath of fresh air, a sign of new beginnings. And then Aureliano Babylonia is born, the last in the line of Aurelianos, almost like fate is giving Macondo one last shot.
But you can still sense that doom hanging over everything, right? The prophecy that Macondo will be destroyed is still there.
It's always there, in the background. This reminder that even the brightest light can be snuffed out. Aureliano Babylonia, even with his name, he seems detached from everything. Spends most of his time shut away in Melchiades' old room with those parchments.
It's like he's in his own world, separate from Macondo falling apart around him, almost like he's getting ready for something.
Yeah, he's isolated both physically and mentally, buried in those old texts, uncovering the secrets of his family and Macondo. He's becoming the keeper of their story, the one who will finally understand it all.
So while the world crumbles, he's digging into the past, trying to figure out the present by looking back.
Exactly. He's trying to untangle the threads of fate that have been woven through his family for generations. And as he deciphers those parchments, he realizes he's not just reading about the past, he's reading about himself, about his own destiny.
That's where the cycle becomes undeniable, right? He's not just repeating the patterns of his ancestors, he's living them, understanding them in a way they never could.
Exactly. And as he gets it, as he figures out the last lines of those parchments, the prophecy starts to come true. The wind picks up, rain starts pouring, and Macondo gets hit by a massive hurricane.
This is it, the end that's been hinted at the whole time. It's this huge, almost apocalyptic moment.
But it's not just destruction, it's also revelation. As the town is being swept away, Aureliano Babylonia finally understands the province completely. He sees the cycle of his family, how their fate was unavoidable, and in that moment, he goes beyond time and space.
So even as everything is destroyed, there's this feeling of transcendence, of meaning being discovered.
It's such a complex ending. It leaves you with more questions than answers, makes you think about the power of stories, how families and communities leave their mark even when they're physically gone.
It reminds us that even though things end, stories live on, right?
Yeah. And the story of Macondo, of the Buendia family, it still impacts readers all these years later. It stays with you, makes you think about your own life, the choices you make, and what you'll leave behind.
I'm curious, what part of the ending speaks to you the most? What sticks with you?
For me, it's that even in destruction, there can be a feeling of closure. Macondo might be gone, but its story continues. It's a reminder that nothing is truly lost as long as it's remembered.
I love that. And it makes me think about how we as readers become part of that story. We carry Macondo with us, and in a way, we keep it alive.
Like we're all remembering together, defying oblivion.
All right, I think we need a minute to let this all sink in. We've traveled through generations of the Buendia family, seen Macondo rise and fall, and uncovered the secrets in those parchments. But we're not done yet. There's still more to explore. We'll be back in a bit to wrap things up and leave you with one final thought to chew on as you keep exploring the incredible world of 100 Years of Solitude. Yeah. So we left off with the banana company rolling into Macondo, And I'm already feeling like things are about to get messy.
Oh, yeah, it's way more than just messy. It's like their whole world gets turned upside down, like almost a mini version of colonialism.
Oh, interesting.
You've got this outside force barging in, all these promises of progress and wealth, but underneath it all, they're just exploiting the people and the land, taking what they want.
And it reminds me of Ursula, even though she's getting on in years. She's trying to warn everyone about the company, right?
Right.
Like, don't let them take over your lives. She's lived through so much, seen so much loss. She's picking up on the pattern.
Exactly. It shows how wise she is. You know, she really gets that history repeats itself. She can see this progress. It's just the same cycle of exploitation that Macondo has always dealt with.
And she's proven right, isn't she?
Yeah.
The company, they bring this short burst of prosperity, but
Look, it comes at a cost.
a steep cost.
Huge cost, yeah. You see this really clear contrast, between the company bosses, they're living it up, while the workers, their situation's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And then it boils over. That horrific massacre of the striking workers, it's brutal. It's a turning point in the story, and it really shows the dark side of unchecked capitalism.
Oh, yeah. It's a chilling reminder that violence is always there, underneath the surface of all this supposed progress. It's like a twisted echo of those civil wars that have ripped Macondo apart time and again.
And it brings up that theme of solitude in a new way, too.
Oh, how so?
Well, after the massacre, Macondo falls into this collective amnesia. It's like the town itself is trying to bury the trauma, pretend it never happened. But this silence, this refusal to face the past, it becomes another form of isolation. The people are cut off from their own history, from each other.
And then in the end, the company just picks up and leaves, right? Leaving Macondo a shell of what it once was.
It's like a punch in the gut, right? All those promises of progress, they just vanish. Macondo is left in ruins, literally and figuratively. It's like they sucked the life out of the town, left it empty.
So we're seeing this decline, this sense of decay settling in. Even Ursula, who's been such a constant force, she's fading.
Yeah, and her death, it's like the end of an era, the last connection to the founding generation, it's gone. And the weight of the past, it feels even heavier on everyone left behind.
But then, just as everything seems bleak, Emeranta Ursula shows up. She's full of life, energy, this stubborn kind of hope,
She is. It's this breath of fresh air, a hint that maybe things can start over. And then Aureliano Babylonia is born, the last of the Aurelianos. Almost like fate is giving Macondo a second chance.
But there's still that feeling of doom, right? Like we know Macondo is going to be destroyed. That prophecy is still out there.
It's always there in the background.
Yeah.
This constant reminder that even the brightest light can be extinguished. And Aureliano Babylonia, despite his name, despite his family, he seems so detached from everything, spends most of his time holed up in Melchise's old room with those parchments.
Yeah, he's living in his own little world while Macondo crumbles around him. It's like he's preparing for something.
He is. He's isolated physically, but also intellectually. Buried in those old texts, trying to figure out the secrets of his family, the secrets of Macondo. He's becoming the keeper of their story, the one who will finally understand it all.
So while the world falls apart, he's looking to the past to try to make sense of the present.
Exactly. He's trying to unravel those threads of fate that have been woven through his family for generations. And as he deciphers the parchments, he realizes he's not just reading about the past, he's reading about himself, about his own destiny.
That's where the cycle becomes undeniable, doesn't it? He's not just repeating his ancestors' patterns, he's living them, understanding them on a level they never could.
Well, got it. And as he figures it all out, as he deciphers those last lines of the parchments, the prophecy starts to unfold. The wind picks up, the rain starts pouring, and Macondo is hit with this massive hurricane.
This is it, the end we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And it feels huge, apocalyptic almost.
It is, but it's not just about destruction. It's also a revelation. As the town is being swept away, Aureliano Babylonia finally grasps the full meaning of the parchments. He sees the cycle of his family's history, the inevitability of their fate, and in that moment of realization, he transcends time and space.
So even in the face of total destruction, there's this sense of transcendence, of finding meaning.
Right. It's an ending that's both complex and layered, leaves you with more questions than answers. It really makes you think about the power of stories, how families and communities leave their mark even after they're physically gone.
It reminds us that even though things end, stories have a way of continuing.
They do. And the story of Macondo, of the Buendia family, it resonates with readers all these years later. It sticks with you, makes you reflect on your own life, the choices you make, and the legacy you'll leave behind.
I'm curious, what part of the ending resonates most with you? What stays with you?
Hmm. For me, it's the idea that even in destruction, there can be closure. Makano might be gone, but its story lives on. It's like a reminder that nothing is truly lost as long as it's remembered.
I love that. And it makes me think about how, as readers, we become part of that story. We carry Macondo with us, and in a way, we help to keep it alive.
Yeah, like we're all remembering together, defying oblivion.
Okay, I think we need another pause here. Let all this soak in for a bit. We've journeyed through generations of the Buendia family, seen the rise and fall of Macondo, and unraveled the secrets hidden in those old parchments. But our exploration isn't over yet. There's still more to uncover, more to discuss. We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up and offer a final thought for you to ponder as you continue to explore the magical world of 100 Years of Solitude. Okay, we're back, and I gotta say, that ending, it really stays with you. Tragic but beautiful at the same time. Leaves you feeling kind of, I don't know, wistful.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It just shows how talented Gabriel Garcia Marquez was, creating such a complex story, making you feel all these things, but keeping it so simple at the same time.
We've talked a lot about solitude, but thinking about it now, it's more than just a theme, right? It's almost like a character in itself. It shapes the entire Buendia family, their decisions, their destinies.
That's such a great point, and it makes you think about all the different ways solitude shows up in the book. There's the physical isolation of Macondo way out there in the jungle, and then there's that emotional isolation so many characters feel, even when surrounded by family, like they're trapped in their own heads, unable to really connect with anyone.
Yeah, like Colonel Aureliano Buendia. Spends years fighting wars, then shuts himself away, making little goldfish. Even with all his kids around, he's still so distant. Stuck in the past.
He's a perfect example of how destructive solitude can be. A man consumed by his own demons, never finding peace or connection. And his story, like so many others in the book, makes you wonder about the impact of trauma, how it echoes down through generations, shaping the lives of those who come after.
It makes you think, could any of the Buendias have escaped their fate if they had broken free from all that solitude and violence?
That's the core question, isn't it? The book really digs into that tension between free will and destiny. Are we in control of our lives, or are we just playing out a script that's already written? 100 Years of Solitude doesn't give you easy answers. It makes you consider all the forces that shape us, the choices we make, and the consequences that ripple through time.
And it does all that with such vivid language, characters that feel so real and complicated.
Yeah.
Even with all the tragedy, there's this undeniable beauty, this magic, woven throughout the whole thing.
Right. That's the magic of magical realism.
Yeah.
It lets you see the world in a totally new way, embrace the extraordinary in the everyday. Flying carpets, priests floating in the air, a woman rising to heaven while folding laundry. Those fantastical elements, they're not just there for fun. They highlight the deeper truths about being human, the mysteries of life and death, the power of stories.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to that final scene, Macondo being swept away by the hurricane. It's this powerful image of how everything eventually ends. But it also feels hopeful somehow. Like the town and the Buendia family are finally free from the weight of their past.
It's a fitting ending to a story that's both grand and personal, heartbreaking and uplifting. And I think that's what makes 100 Years of Solitude such a masterpiece. It leaves you in awe, makes you appreciate the power of stories, and gives you a deeper understanding of what it means to be human.
So as you keep exploring this incredible world, think about the cycles in your own life, the legacies you carry, the stories you'll tell. What patterns do you see repeating? What choices can you make to break free from the past and create a future filled with meaning?
Remember, even when you feel alone, there's always a chance for connection, to find purpose and meaning in the shared experience we call life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into 100 Years of Solitude. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep those pages turning.